and my homie low. You know we kick it like every day.
I can't show your face, huh?
No. Hey, put this on.
Look, I'm making a cameo in his YouTube. Fine, I'm gonna make the intro to your new video. You ready?
Yeah, go.
Welcome back to XB's channel.
Is that it?
It's undeniable that the YouTuber, much like any popular figure out there in the world, is absolutely nothing without their fan base. If nobody is watching your videos, you don't get money. And you don't get people to watch your videos if they don't at the very least like the character that you present in your video. And while this is a hard thing to master, the baseline entry of what you need to do to get into this could not be more simple. It used to be in the name. YouTube. Broadcast yourself. You can portray yourself as simply just yourself, or you can design a character based off your general interest, and no matter who you are, somebody is bound to gravitate towards it. As a small creator, or niche internet micro-celebrity, if you will, experiencing fans, regular ass people who gave your content the time of day and fell in love with it, or even just liked it, having that feeling is unimaginable. It's one of the best feelings you possibly could have. And yeah, I'm sure it does become just a numbers thing once you start getting bigger and bigger, but I cannot imagine that feeling that fans elicit ever truly going away. So guess who had to shit in the punch bowl? Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, bad. I feel like I say some variation of this in every single video, even though that isn't really the case. I'm going to trust that everyone watching is at least semi-aware of the horrors that Twitter entails. You know, everyone hates everything, nobody is allowed to be happy or positive, yada yada. And this constant fight to be the most absolutely morally correct has 100% affected the conversation of YouTubers on there. YouTubers are an easy target. Most of us are genuinely terrible people, or dicks, or people who make content that could be easily shit on, or all three put together. And as of late, I've noticed that the climate of these discussions has been getting significantly worse. Yet again, there's a much broader topic I plan to cover in the far future, but as more and more time surpasses us, the harsher and harsher I see the climate of internet discussion becoming. As discussed last episode with the Snyder bots, fandoms have gotten more crazy and extreme when it comes to defending their all-knowing internet god, but on the other side of the conversation, things aren't too sane either. We have begun cultivating this idea online that someone has to be a bad person in order for them to be criticized or disliked online. Because otherwise you're just nitpicking and biased.
No. Wrong. Moron.
So now, instead of, I don't really care for LS Mark, I disagree with the majority of his opinions, and his content doesn't really speak to me, it's now, LS Mark is objectively wrong, he purposely shills to the majority, he is a cuck, and he supports gore getting sent to minors. Yes, really. But when you haven't even that string of evidence, you can always press the guaranteed win button of the fan base and how you're either abusing them or making them toxic. Fandoms and the YouTubers' place in how they handle them has begun to become a crux argument for these people. There used to be a clear-cut guideline of how responsible a YouTuber was for their fans, and to be fair, a lot of those guidelines still are intact. As we discussed in the Alpha Males episode, if a content creator is directly leading their likely young fan base down a road of becoming more hateful, then yeah, that's on them 100% and they should be chastised for it. That is a very clear crossing of that line. Other than that, the line between a YouTuber and their fan base feels fragmented and blurry, and I blame this green asshole! We're hitting all the beaten to death topics with this video, huh? Unfortunately, this is a topic of toxic fandoms, so he had to come up at some point. Dream and his cronies blew up quickly, and they really made content that appealed to that standing side of the internet. Watching Dream SMP content, any of it, you really get a sense that these creators know they have this devout and loyal fan base who absolutely loves them, and they play into that. So why is it that Dream over here caught flack for doing what all of his other friends are doing? Was it simply because he was the biggest? No, it's because he actively weaponized his fan base. You know, the thing that the video is literally named after. I've done my research, and I don't think he ever actively told people to go and harass somebody who made fun of him, but he would do this thing where he would respond to somebody knowing what would happen and then just play the "I've already spoken out against my toxic fandom" card. Oh yeah, dude, you did a great job calling out your toxic fandom one time at the tail end of this twit longer, one time during a several-hour stream, or one time vaguely on your alt account. That totally makes up for the time that you made a second channel video basically enabling these people.
Stalker fans must be stopped is something that's been said a lot on YouTube and Twitter over the last year or so, involving a specific type of fan known as a stan. Now, the word stan was originally meant as stalker fan, but it slowly shifted to more meaning super fan than anything else.
Oh, no, sir. I'm not pissing in your pool. I'm just balancing the water level. Truth be told, and we'll get more into this later, I don't really care if the YouTuber does not acknowledge their toxic fandom, because being blunt, it's the equivalent of squirting a water gun at a forest fire. The toxic fan is often not toxic because of the thing they are a fan of. Usually, they're already toxic people who just happen to be a fan of something, and those toxic people will never stop being toxic, even when the person they're in love with isn't or actively speaks against it. Again, see the Snyderbots episode. But the thing about Dream is that he would always use these vapid callouts as a shield against criticism whenever people realized that these toxic cunts were attacking someone he was roasting on Twitter. Again, something we'll get into later, but when you see an account actively lying on you or saying things that hurt your image, in my opinion, you're allowed to call them out on it, no matter how big or small. Also, if someone insults you or misrepresents you, and I mean deeply insults you or deeply misrepresents you, in my opinion, again, I think you might be in the clear to call them out on it. But when BallsLover32 says that your tweet is embarrassing, I think that's when you have to be the bigger man and just ignore it. But Dream never ignored it, and he would just keep on responding to people knowing about his hostile as fuck fandom. Oh, and also he would consistently barge into other people's conversations that had nothing to do with him and write these paragraph-long responses about how much more morally sound he was than the others. Classy guy. And he would only pull out this "I don't support my toxic stans" garbage after their damage had already been done. And it's just like, no, you don't get to pretend you didn't know this would happen.
I'm just gonna express that if you are a person on Twitter and you have 7 followers and you get doxxed on Twitter, the odds of you having something happen to you in your life are so astronomically small that it's not even worth worrying about. It's not even worth it remotely. I mean, everybody that I know that is a creator has had their address leaked, has had their name leaked, has had everything leaked about them, and it's very rare to have things actually happen, even people with millions and millions of haters and millions of fans and millions of things. So I guess this is more of a, hey, you know, don't worry too much, don't stress. If you're at the end of the day, if you're on the internet and you have something like that happen to you, try and ignore it the best you can. Try and you know, avoid it, and you'll be fine. At the end of the day, you'll be okay. Again, that doesn't mean doxing. Okay, doxing is horrible.
All right, that's terrible advice, by the way. You don't say, hey, try not to get doxed, but if you're going to get doxed, it's going to be okay.
It's like having a really big dick on the bus. If every time you turn around you slap the guy who's next to you's leg, yeah, you might not be responsible for the first few times, but after the 25th, you know what will happen, and you need to start taking a little accountability. But again, Dream never did, and he is currently in the public eye a massive clown. However, his impact on the perception of YouTubers' toxic fan bases has only become more and more sour. The takeaway should have been YouTubers are responsible when it comes to not throwing their weight around when it comes to their fans, but as usual, the internet has twisted and malformed this message into the much more simplified YouTubers are responsible for their fans. Point blank. So, let's get into that, shall we?
Hey yo, I'm tired as fuck. That's what we should call this joint, Tired in Malibu.
So we're gonna split this into two parts, with this part being a lot more cut and dry, to me at least. As I said, usually toxic fans are toxic people first, and then they just happen to become fans of someone. Even in a case like Dreams, I don't think he necessarily made his fan base toxic, but rather catered his content towards an audience that had a large chunk of toxic people. However, I would be very silly to not acknowledge that yes, YouTubers are very capable of making their fans toxic. Things like spamming other people's comment sections or feeding into the parasocial relationship like Dream over there, or the much more extreme example, the alpha males promoting this toxic masculinity to their young fan base, almost coercing them into joining their hive mind. Here is an actual for real, not joking comment I got on my alpha males video. The irony of critiquing the manosphere with all of the same NPC rhetoric that made it a necessary niche. In 50 years, the West will be rigidly traditionalistic, likely seeing Islam replace Christianity, and these same losers will still be dissecting Gamergate to figure out why men rejected modernity and how it reflects on race and trans whatever. Yeah, this isn't ironic. What the fuck does literally any of that mean? As I said in that video, I don't think these guys are necessarily purposefully leading these children down this path, but intentions don't really mean that much when the results are tiny child inducted into sexism cult. And in cases like this, I feel like platforms such as Twitter are very much necessary, and you need a push against garbage like this, and hopefully that push will cycle through and maybe not get some kids to buy into this crap. But, as usual, Twitter takes it way too far. Like, seriously too far, way too far. A lot of YouTuber fandoms consist of largely underages. Even when the chart says otherwise, we all know that kids lie about their ages on the internet. And we all know because we were all kids. And we all did it. Don't lie to me. Fun fact, this video was originally going to be called Weaponizing Children Against YouTubers, but then, you can't monetize the word children, so, you know. Why is this guy in front of his mostly child audience? This is a sentiment I see echoed by many a Twitter user when they want to make a YouTuber look as guilty as possible. And because this is a website where a 42-year-old marrying a 26-year-old is seen as predatorial, you can guess what most of these are implying. I see this come up whenever creators collab with adult film stars. For example, Kai, Speed, and Tiana Trump. This got people riled up saying that Speed and Kai were promoting corn to their child audience. Then there's the overwhelming amount of unnecessary shit that Mr. Beast gets whenever he breathes. Bro cannot even post a workout progress pic anymore without a bunch of people trying to tell him he's a weirdo for doing it in front of his child audience. Fun fact, this video originally started in the beta as simply a Mr. Beast video, but I got tired of watching Mr. Beast videos. And the question I always bring up to this predicament is, why is it their job to take care of these kids that they don't even know? Does Mr. Beast really have to consider his baby audience before doing anything? And while the Speed and Kai thing is a bit more understandable, it's not like they're pulling an Aiden Ross and streaming straight up Cornhub. The stream is not even really that much more graphic or sexual than anything you could find on the homepage for ASMR and hot tub streams on Twitch. And I think a good example of the very worst of this argument would have to be Saberspark. Saberspark gets a lot of shit for being well, kind of weird, but also for being weird in front of his minor fan base. But like, just because Saberspark makes videos on animated movies and shows doesn't mean he's a kid's channel. Would you consider this shit for kids? And if kids are watching his channel, I mean, why is that on him? He didn't sign up to be the caretaker of all these children. He was simply just here to entertain. Man, if only there were people put in charge of children that could monitor what they watch so that they wouldn't end up becoming heathens. Wow, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? And really, this is just kind of one of those arguments that becomes dumber and dumber the more you realize there's no line and it can be applied to literally any scenario. Hey, why did Cosmonaut Variety Hour put a montage of half-naked men in his Marvel video? Isn't his audience mostly teenagers? Hey, why did Critical make a rhino sex joke in his Tumblr video?
Batman a rhinoceros with a veiny is pouring out of the rhino's.
Isn't his audience mostly teenagers? Why do YouTubers even mention sex at all? Why do they swear? Why do they even exist above a PG rating if their audience is mostly children? You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of back in the day when parents would get mad at violent video games and how it was turning the kids into monsters when there was a very simple explanation to that problem. Don't buy your kid that damn game! I get it's not the exact same thing because there is no ESRB type rating for YouTubers. What? Again, the whole thing just feels like a power trip, like a game of who can best who when it comes to morality. And I guess to end this segment, I will go ahead and ask a question. Why do you hold YouTubers to this impossibly high standard that you do not hold movies, music, or video games to? Well, let me give you a couple of answers to that question. No, seriously, I'm gonna go back for the other side real quick. See, I like to follow this ideology that I've turned into a statement when I write these stupid videos, and it's that nothing is absolute. Not even this statement. And that means, by default, nothing is inherently always right or always wrong. Except for when it is. Well, what I'm trying to get at here is that I like to get the full picture of something before I go ahead and make my definitive decision. And while writing this video, I began to realize that I don't necessarily agree with myself as much as I initially thought. Back in the Alpha Males episode, I literally said, I hate when people try to pin down a creator for having a child audience and trying to force them to accommodate for that. I will always side with creative expression, and if that creative expression is not kid-friendly, that's too fucking bad. And I mean, yeah, I'm more often than not going to side with creative expression as, well, I am a creative expressor. But I think to write off all criticism of expression of self simply because it's their channel, they can do what they want with it, is dumb, and I want to shine some light on why. As briefly mentioned before, a platform like Twitter is necessary for an online ecosystem. If we only had places like the YouTube comments section for callouts, a lot of terrible people would be getting away with a lot of terrible things. And despite what I said about the sense of competition for morality I smelled in a lot of them, I can also see a lot of genuine care and concern in some of these posts. Maybe corn stars shouldn't be pushed as frequently as possible given the exploitative nature of the corn industry. Maybe Critical should not be collaborating with Mizkif right now because he, what the fuck? Maybe James Charles should not be getting such a warm welcome back considering the fact that he, okay, maybe the corn star thing wasn't so bad, Jesus Christ. Plus, YouTube is just an inherently more parasocial medium. More often than not, a video is supposed to be a simulation of some sort of conversation, and so, no matter how many times the white guy behind the camera says he's not your friend, there will always be a small part of your brain that thinks he is. And so it makes sense to be more weary of what the content creator says and how it affects their audience, given the fact that the connection between creator and viewer is much more dangerously close than any other medium. Does any of this really dramatically affect my stance on this situation? Not really, but it gives me an understanding of the other side and why they may feel the way they do, which helps me make my own opinions with better judgment.
Hey yo, I'm tired as fuck. That's what we should call this joint, Tired in Malibu.
When I say a YouTuber is abusing their fan base, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking more so about weaponizing your fan base, or turning a blind eye to how bad your fan base can get. As I said, there are a large chunk of people under the impression that if you are a YouTuber, you should not respond to any criticism you get, as it might incite a dogpile on the person you're responding to, and I gotta be honest, I think this is really dumb. This is a hard topic to discuss because, one, the evidence is often very reactionary to the time and is often lost to that time, and two, even if you show the evidence you do find, you can't win. The basic response if you don't have evidence is, you're not showing evidence of it happening, therefore it's not true. And the basic response when you do show evidence is, this evidence is cherry-picked, nobody else thinks like this. And so to try and get my point across as efficiently as possible, I thought the best course of action would be to draw an example from my comment section. Look, the way I see this is, I'm a nobody, although a massive nobody now, thank you for 4K. So if this shit is happening in my comment section, I am more than sure it is happening in some massive YouTubers' comment sections far more frequently. So, on my game theory video, I got a lot of comments that really really honed in on a point I made against a guy in section 1. Now, I'm not going to go through this guy's humongous paragraph. There are a lot of parts of it I would love to dissect and dispute, but we're just going to focus on the single topic at hand. Oh, and also, their name's blurred out for a reason. Don't fucking harass them. You also seem to dig in unnecessarily harshly on the artist for locking their thread. Like, I can't imagine why a small creator would lock their thread after realizing they may have made a mistake in calling out a several million subscriber channel with seemingly a more young skewing fan base, which may also suffer from some kind of parasocial relationship. It's not hard to understand, and I'm sure you would have too if you had taken some time to think it through. I can't imagine the rabid DMs you'd get just for criticizing a large content creator. Now, if you've seen the video, you would know that yes, I did chastise this guy for locking his Twitter thread. But you would also know that this guy did that because he accused Game Theory of art theft, and a lot of people just took that at face value and ran with it without ever checking the thread again, where this guy admitted that he actually had no idea whether or not MatPat really did it. He didn't lock the tweet because he was scared of being bullied. He locked the tweet because he lied and didn't want to be criticized for it. And most of these parasocial fans that you were speaking of were rightfully calling out this guy on his garbage. He put a dent in MatPat's image. A small dent, but a dent nonetheless, and tried his hardest to look like the good guy after it. So really, why shouldn't he be criticized for it? Again, a hard topic to talk about because it's very easy for people to look at me saying this and just respond with, you want people to be harassed for expressing their opinions, and it's like, no. Obviously, you should not harass somebody online like ever. That makes you no better than the person you're responding to. But if you spread lies or are a massive dick to somebody and they or someone else happens to see you and calls you out on it, that's on you, no matter how big or small that person is. But again, on the flip side, one of the things you gotta learn as a social media star is to just take it on the chin. Again, if fucking Booger Eater 323 comments, "you suck" on your video, you should not start going crazy on him. There are an alarming amount of creators who would whine to the CEO of YouTube, or put false copyright strikes on other creators, or straight up sue other creators simply because they were making fun of them. And it is quite possibly the most disgraceful thing you can do as a YouTuber, and it's no better or different than calling out somebody with like 10 followers. You just gotta accept that the things that these people say about you are most of the time not personal attacks, and you should not take them as personal attacks. Anyways, I could go on forever, but I looked at the page count of this script, and it's time to wrap things up. I do not want you to walk away from this video with a clear, definitive answer. I think I've made it very clear that while my stance is not necessarily neutral, I am more than willing to listen and communicate with the other side in this video. And while I do lean more towards one side than the other, I don't necessarily want you to walk away from this video agreeing with me, but rather understanding that these situations are not nearly as black and white as they may initially seem. So the takeaway of this video, all spelled out, would be this. Are YouTubers responsible for their fans? I don't know. But please analyze the situation before you say you do. Alright, it's time for this guy to go on again. Hey, so you know those videos that are on topics that are super interesting but don't really sound the best when it's put into a single sentence? And so the creator will attach something that is a little bit more interesting to that single sentence, and so people will come and watch it and maybe not get exactly what they expected, but still something that is worth their time. You know those videos? Yeah, me too. Anyway, Ellis Mark. Ellis Mark is a reviewer here on YouTube that is primarily focused on animated works, however will frequently branch off into other mediums. He's most well known for his giant ranking videos where he'll take an offensively long TV show and then rank it episode by episode, and he's been at this for a while now. He's a content creator I have a lot of genuine respect for and enjoy. Yes, for once in this channel's lifetime, I am not talking about a YouTuber that I have no opinion on. I am not talking about a YouTuber that I dislike. I am talking about a YouTuber I genuinely am a fan of. As I began to watch more and more of Mark's content, I began to notice an upward trend in how much he would respond to, well, people who didn't like him.
Time of recording this, and what did I think? Well, I tweeted out saying that I simply played it, which apparently translated into me hating it somehow. Then I agreed through a SpongeBob gif that it was kind of boring, and somehow that got twisted into me supporting minors being sent gore. Must have missed that part of the game.
It was understandable. A big draw of Mark's content to me is that he spoke his honest truth and feelings, irregardless of what his audience or anybody else might think. And I get that's not something unique or specific to him, but he comes across as very honest and consistent within his reviews, and I, plus a lot of other people, clearly like that. However, as human beings typically do, our opinions conflict, and some people overreact incredibly to that, especially when A, you have a large following and fan base, or B, you publicly voice those opinions online. Mark, doing both of these things, gets tons of unreasonable complaints, and I don't think he's in the wrong for calling some of them out, especially given the fact that he calls them out very well. But then, as I continue to watch LS Mark's content, I noticed in another video that this happened.
One, I can't get mad at folks for not getting 5 hours into a video like that to hear what I think of the animation. It's much more accessible to watch a 45-second short where I try to sum up these thoughts within a single statement. But also, it's not constructive to imply that these things have any relation with each other, that the staff would intentionally try to focus more on the animation than good writing. I've also said before that sometimes it feels as if the artists are trying too hard to come up with the next big SpongeBob meme instead of reeling it back and knowing when to hit the audience with those exaggerated faces when, again, that's not really fair on the artists. It's impossible to assume the thought process behind this shift, but to imply it's for any other reason than they wanted to draw a funny face is a pretty cynical mindset to have, and for that, I apologize, truly.
Now, as a fan, when I saw this video, my gut reaction was,
why are you such a pussy? What happened?
But after sitting on it for a bit, I was like, nah, that's stupid. For one, I am not Mark, so I do not get to dictate whether he does or does not apologize for something. And two, it's totally fine if you want to explain yourself and your emotions, especially when you want to apologize for something.
I've made a severe...
But I bring this up because it got the old noggin chugging along and started to make me think about, well, unfortunately, there's no less corny name for them than haters. If you're familiar with this channel, you know, you're like you're a smart guy. You're subscribed. Subscribe to the channel. But if you're familiar with this channel, you might be thinking about the weaponizing fans against YouTubers episode, an episode which Mark did play a part in. And yeah, this is kind of a spin-off slash spiritual successor to that original video. However, instead of focusing on the ethics of criticizing a YouTuber and how much you should criticize them for, we are going to instead focus on the YouTuber's response to that, and more specifically, when they give into that hate. Yeah, hater. What is a hater? It seems pretty simple, right? Well, maybe in real life it would be a much more simple concept, however online I don't think it's that simple. A hater online is somebody who loves something so much that anything that devalues the thing that they love is something really bad. Something by principle they must hate. Whenever someone throws shade your way, it's usually never just because they hate your stupid fucking face, but rather it's because they think that you think lowly of something that they love. Even in cases where they're mad at you for liking something, it's usually never just, wow, you're a fucking idiot for liking this. It's almost always, why did you like X more than B? And usually B is something that they have a strong affection for.
This Assassin's Creed's actually good. When you talk all high and mighty on a shitty game like Cuphead and prefer it over this, or a game like Uncharted, your view and opinion is invalid.
Does this excuse their behavior? Well, no, obviously not, but it adds an extra layer of depth to these detractors and why they would act a certain way, and there's another layer of depth that I will get into later. As I said, Mark, being someone who outwardly voices his opinions on popular franchises, gets tons of these detractors that are so offended by his opinions that they just straight up hate him. How do I know all this? Well, remember when I said I was a fan of LS Mark? Yeah, let's go ahead and rewind that all the way back to summer of 2018, where a 13, almost 14-year-old ex-beta kid was watching nothing on YouTube but Storytime Animators, to which he gets a video and is recommended from an up-and-coming channel named Immortal Resurrection. I'm joking about that. I told you I was a fan. To which I get a YouTube video from an up-and-coming channel called LS Mark titled, My Problem with the Storytime Animation Community. Problem? But I like it, so that means it's flawless! I was so angered by this video and its eventual follow-up that I ended up writing my first ever YouTube script all about how I didn't like LS Mark. Thank God I never recorded this. Now here's the weird thing though. I don't think I was entirely wrong within this script. Because when I look back at this video, hell, Mark's channel in general during this era, I see videos that are drenched in cynicism, hyperfixating on points that quite frankly don't matter, and overall I can see myself making decent points against this video. And that's the funny thing about haters. The line between them and genuine criticism is as simple as, Well, being an asshole, which is where you as a content creator come in. It is very easy to write off all detractors as haters. It is even easier when they actually are haters. And as a content creator, you have to learn how to take criticism, accept it as part of the job, and even actually learn from it. This statement stems from the assumption that most criticism online came from a place of goodwill and is reasonable. Why would I be making this video if most criticism online came from a place of goodwill and is reasonable? Most criticism is in this tiny nugget that is compounded into this metaphorical pile of hate dirt. Fucking hate dirt. And thus, it's not really that unreasonable or even wrong to completely disregard haters as a YouTuber. However, like most things in life that are optional, you end up better off if you do the tough thing. That wasn't very well written. The point is, most people who are able to swallow their pride and look for that metaphorical nugget in that metaphorical hate dirt end up in a better position.
You're really driving this metaphor into the ground, man.
The thing about that, though, is that it's a balancing act, and it is a damn hard one. Not only do you have that problem of just suffocating yourself with hate comments, which is really good for your mental health, but you also run the risk of ripping some of the soul out of your videos, becoming less of yourself, and just being super sanitized because you don't want to offend anyone, like IGN. When you watch an IGN review, you are going to get a series of statements that are impossible to disagree with.
There are many perch takedown possibilities offered, and new toys to play with too, such as the webline, which allows you to create your own high wires over your enemies to prey on them from above.
Or you get an actual opinion, but then it is immediately followed up with a statement or another opinion meant to contradict the one they just said. Or they just straight up lie to you to keep you happy.
But it's safe to call this another thrilling Spider-Man adventure that delivers Insomniac's best tale yet.
So, Spider-Man 2 is the best Insomniac Spider-Man game, but it has the lowest score out of all of them. I wouldn't care if you were just honest. And nobody likes IGN, not because they have opinions, because they don't. It's not a person telling you these things. It's a mindless drone spewing focus-tested opinions in order to piss the least amount of people off. And that is what happens when you put too much stock on a hater's opinion. What was the title of this video? Oh yeah, Alice Mark. I mean, Mark strikes a pretty good balance of being honest with himself and learning from his mistakes. I think. I don't really know the guy personally. Hell, I don't even think he's subscribed to me. The way you are, right? You're subscribed to me, right? Because if you're not, you might want to change that, you know? Subscribe! He addresses when he fucks up, and he approves upon it when he feels it's necessary. It's very simple. But if I had to chew out one thing, and again, I'm not his PR, but if I had to chew out one thing, I would say he responds to hate a little bit too much. I get that in most of these instances he's in the right, but it's really hard to not look at all of these examples and think they're just a touch bit... I don't know, whiny. There comes a point in responding to people where whether you're right or wrong just gets completely thrown out the window. A good example of this is, unfortunately, the needle drop, aka Anthony Fantano. Now, I like Fantano for a lot of the same reasons I like LS Mark, actually. The thing is, he isn't the best when it comes to handling criticism. It really feels like when he realizes that he's in the right in a situation, he just completely fucking loses it and starts saying whatever he wants to whoever he wants. Most recently, he gave an artist known as Sexy Red an 8 out of 10 on her new album, which got people absolutely pissed, which, yes, is stupid. But the amount of attention Fantano gave these people is also stupid. But again, if he handled this situation better, i.e. didn't respond to every single fucking person attacking him, he would have been 100% in the right. As mentioned in weaponizing fans against YouTubers, there are people who think that you should not respond to any criticism at all if you're a YouTuber, period. And like I said in that video, I don't agree with this at all. The problem with criticism online is that in certain instances, you almost have to respond before you get telephoned. For those who don't know, getting telephoned is when a generalized simplistic idea or a misconception about somebody is spread so far that it becomes the general consensus on that person. Typically in the creator space, it starts with people who dislike someone and they just need everyone else to agree with them, and so they go on a multi-rant tirade, and because hate travels fast, people who have not watched the creator in years and people who have never even heard of the creator before that point start spewing the exact same garbage until the general consensus is just monotone voice guy who talks about stuff I don't personally care about, and therefore stuff that doesn't matter, and also has no opinions except for when I disagree with him, then he only has bad opinions. Might be a little bit too hyper specific there, but you get what I'm at. So yeah, I can't really blame Mark for wanting to respond so much, even if I think the volume in which he responds is a little high. And there's one more thing I want to talk about when it comes to the hater itself. The fact that most of them are children. Again, 13-year-old XB wrote this script. The internet, particularly that site I'm trying to name less, really rewards thinking in black and white. This is good. Anything that goes against it is bad. This is not how the world works. Just because somebody disagrees with you doesn't mean you have the right to be an asshole to them. There's this creator podcast from a while back called Loudmouths with Quiet Wild Spartans and FPS Diesel, a podcast that I would love to do a video on, but well, play the Final Days thing.
Dude, no one cares.
In one of the earliest episodes they made, Diesel says this, which is a statement that has stuck in my head for a really long time.
Verbalize and address your opinions and say why you think a certain thing instead of just insulting someone. Because if you're better at constructing those arguments now, you know, especially if you're like a teenager, because I know a lot of my audience is, when you're older, that's gonna pay off. Okay, because you'll be better at arguing your ideas with your peers. And that's going to be really important, especially if you want to be successful in whatever you do, regardless of what it is.
And he's absolutely correct. I know I usually save the themes for the very end of the video. However, if you were going to take away one thing, it would be to put emphasis on the why. It will save you time and embarrassment. Sure, if you act like an asshole to every single person you perceive as wrong, you might end up with a decent line of friends. Hell, you might even end up with a following. But you will also end up with a legion of people who absolutely hate your fucking guts. And sometimes, rightfully so. If you place yourself in a hive mind of people whom encourage you and you encourage to be aggressive and shit-headed to everyone who thinks differently to you, you're gonna end up losing a lot of the conversational skills you need to function in a day-to-day society. Oof! Again, do yourself the favor and describe why you feel a certain way when somebody says something. Because the worst thing you can do is let a great why get buried in that pesky old hate dirt. There are always going to be people that hate you. And yeah, that sounds depressing, but that's just life, and it's up to you to determine whether or not you're going to let that affect you. And I hope this video taught you as well that most haters are misguided. They're children. They're people who just don't know how to respond to your opinion. Not that that makes anything that they say okay, but just keep that in mind whenever you think about that. Also, LS Mark at some point. That's all for this video. Subscribe or I'll force feed you fucking potatoes. And again, I know the title is somewhat misdirecting, but what sounds more interesting to you? LS Mark and giving in to hate, or what it means to be an online hater and how you, a creator, can deal with that, and also how young most haters are, and also parentheses, LS Mark's in there too somewhere. Subscribe to my second channel at XB's Dumpster. Follow me on Twitter at KingXB, and that's all. And go fuck yourself, mate. Haters.
Well, that man does